Councilmember Gettle?
Present.
Sorry, let me pull up my roll call here. Councilmember Noor?
Present.
Councilmember Learman? Councilmember Marsh?
Here.
Councilmember Manfredi?
Here.
Vice Mayor Wade?
Here.
Mayor Smith?
Here.
Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. All right, just to start this off, I just want to talk a little bit about what our goal is here today, because we haven't done a work session in forever. And so, yeah, years. And so they work a little differently. Normally, you don't have a call to the public, so you don't see a call to the public on the agenda. The purpose of tonight is to talk about basically three items: a strategic framework, a partnership policy, and a committee restructure. And each of these had documents that are available online for the entire public to review, something that hopefully all of you who are so interested in being here tonight, which we really appreciate, have already done so. So given that, what I'd like to do is have staff give the presentation, because it's very likely that they will answer a lot of your questions as well as our questions, and then give council an opportunity to voice some of their concerns, changes, tweaks, and then after that, if someone from the public still feels like they would like to add, we will definitely listen to that as well. So given that, Quinn, would you please start off the presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Quinn Canold. I'm the Community Enrichment Director for the City of Maricopa, as that's kind of an unusual department name for cities. Just giving a background for the public's benefit. Community enrichment is where we interact with the public over our recreation, our events, community center, and library. We have been working for about the last year to year and a half to kind of adjust our framework as we are a rapidly growing city. When we explored our recreation needs when we began as a city, there wasn't a lot of opportunity, options, competitions, so lots of things that were not available. So the city played a very active role in creating programs and getting the community involved. Quality of life has always been very important since the foundation of the city, and that continues to today. So now, as we've grown to be the 5th fastest growing city in the country, we've been tasked with looking at how do we make sure that we are being responsible, we're taking responsible steps, that we're inviting private opportunities to flourish, and still creating an outstanding product in what we do as a recreation outlet for the community. So we just wanted to really start by setting that framework tonight and being very clear that our goal in this framework is to amplify and enrich recreational opportunities in the city of Maricopa. How do we have more happening, more going on, and what's the right approach to doing that? So many of these ideas that we've been presented were presented to council at Futures Planning, had an opportunity to give some feedback. We said, let's have a work session as well so that this conversation can continue. So we have representation from our various divisions within community enrichment tonight that you'll hear from. And first we're gonna hear from our Recreation Superintendent, David McLeish, who's gonna really talk about this definition of what this strategic framework is, what it's designed to do, and I'll let David take it from there.
Just got shocked. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name's David McLeish. I'm the Recreation Superintendent, as Quinn introduced me. So this is something that I'm very excited to work on. Ultimately, all of us are extremely passionate about seeing Maricopa become, the best city it can be, and it's truly a wonderful, wonderful community. I know last night I was with our staff. We just started our adult softball, and it was our opening night, and everything went awesome. Our athletic staff did just an awesome job, and I went out there to look at everything, and it was so cool to see. I saw people, playing softball. I saw families cheering them on. And as I walked back to my car to my left, I saw, lots of kids on the fields with our youth soccer. And as I kept walking to my right, I saw more separate groups. I saw Little League, I saw some other groups doing soccer, and then as I started driving, this was my most favorite thing. I passed the pickleball courts, which are full as they usually are. I saw a family on one of the courts, and there was just two parents. I saw them with probably a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and they're doing their best to hit the ball, but you could tell they were, teaching them, how to play. And so it was cool to see those things and to reflect that, this truly is a wonderful community. And the purpose of this framework is how do we continue to create those memories now, but in 20 years from now. And this introduction is really the crux of this entire framework. It's how we as a community enrichment department, it's how we plug into the city's overall mission statement of how are we able to be thriving and durable? Because ultimately those things, there's a lot of push and pull there, and sometimes they contradict. And I'll go ahead and read it, but it's a delicate thing to balance a durable, economically viable, sustainable community while being premier and thriving. It has become far too commonplace across the nation that cities that were once thriving and vibrant have become cities of decay, lacking ultimate durability and sustainability. Being premier cannot be at the expense of durability. A city has a responsibility to be thriving for every future generation. And so the scene as I left the park, I hope that's still a scene that we can see 100 years from now. But truly, there's a lot of cities that are in that decay. And how are we as a city, we're so young, we're growing rapidly, how can we protect our thriving community? How can we maintain that? And we wanted to pull up a few examples of things that we feel like are thriving, they're durable. There's a lot that really happens in our community, and a few of those examples, the Veterans Day Parade, Food Truck Friday, Farmers Market, Turkey Run, Province Spring Arts and Crafts Fair, Our Lady of Grace Festival, and I could go on and on and on. There's really a lot of things happening, but I want to highlight that all of those items, those are happening independent of the city. Those are community champions stepping up and running those, so there's no strain on the city. But truly they represent, hey, we're thriving. We have wonderful community members providing these opportunities to residents. And one that I thought was super neat and highlighted to your right there is a very recent development in the community. This was just in the last few months, and those are pictures of a Facebook post, but it's a community garden that started. And it's very interesting. I was talking to Jen, and she was mentioning how in a senior leadership or executive meeting, they were discussing different things that we as a city could do to help our residents and increase what we have here in the city. And a community garden was actually one of the items that came up. But lo and behold, just not a few weeks or maybe a month later, we see this happen on social media. And it's super neat. I mean, they've got educational events. It's a community garden, so people can come rent beds. They partner with local businesses. One of the most recent posts I saw, they had a local Girl Scout troop have a bed, and they were learning about plants, and so super cool. And the city had no part in that other than we created an environment where community members can step up and create something special. And a question, and this can be hypothetical or not, but what if when we had brought that idea up, what if the city had started that? We're now in charge of maintenance. We're very heavily involved. It takes time. It takes money. Is this something that we can then continue years into the future? I mean, if there's economic unrest, is that a service that can we provide? But instead, we've got an exceptional community member who's stepping up and providing something to our residents that takes bandwidth off of the city, and so we can focus things like building roads, ensuring our community is safe, etc. And all these are the tenets. These were shown to you at futures planning, and so I'll skip through. I do want to just, and I can go back and read them if you'd like, but I do want to highlight on point number 5, something that was changed based on feedback. At the very end where it says the city will price the activity at a market rate. Previously it said we will price it in such a way as to not compete with private nonprofit sectors. We said the city will price activity at market rate to provide a little bit more flexibility with how we price that when we're looking at what are other cities doing, what are the nonprofit private sectors doing, and what are potentially even things doing states away. And so we have a little bit of flexibility on which areas we look at and how we apply that. There we go. So as we look to put this strategic framework in action, these are just a couple of examples, and I kind of want to walk through. And if you look at point number 6, I'll go back and highlight that. It says, if any recreation, art, event, music, or educational offering that are done by the city can feasibly be done by the private nonprofit sector at a sufficient quality and reasonable cost, the city has a responsibility to stop their offering or transfer the offering over to the private nonprofit sector in order to protect taxpayer dollars. And so I mentioned youth soccer. Over the last year, we've seen community members begin to step up to the plate. We've seen CCV. They just built a beautiful church, and as part of what they offer, they are starting to offer a youth soccer program. We've seen AYSO, which is a nationally recognized nonprofit that provides recreational soccer. They're starting to be in schools. We've also been approached by FC Arizona, who's currently a club team. They do offer recreational offerings in other cities in the valley. We've also seen Paladin Sports come into the community, who's also starting to offer this. So at this point, when we apply the strategic framework, we recognize, are we as a city, should we continue to offer this when there's other organizations who are experts in this who can potentially take this over? And all of these things won't happen at once. We have to look at these case by case to see how we can best implement this in our community. But if there's an opportunity where it makes sense, there's partners who can take something over, they can provide a quality service, and it saves staff bandwidth with our time, and it would reduce costs to the city, that's a massive win where it's both thriving, the program is still happening, it's still being offered to residents, but there's no strain, whether fiscally or time, on the city. And another example is our senior center. And I do want to quickly mention, these are not to say staff don't do a great job running these. I do want to say, staff do a really, really great job running these. But our senior center, we're currently offering, different programs for our seniors. Up in the valley, there are insurance companies, I'll mention them, Optum. They have senior centers that are free and open to the public. They do classes, they have fitness centers in them. They provide space to do different activities. They partner with a lot of different senior services. And again, I'm not saying that this is something we will do. I just mentioned this is something we as staff will explore according to the strategic framework. And if that partnership can make sense, and again, we don't know, it just means we will explore it. But if we could increase the services to seniors, it's still free to the public, and it would reduce costs to the city, that is a recipe to be both thriving and durable. And I want to move forward to talk about some things that we have done that are in line with the framework, but I do want to highlight the fact that this isn't, I want to be clear that we have not specifically applied this framework in its entirety. So these are flavors in how we've done it. But once this is adopted, we'll be able to move forward and do, bigger, greater things, and have very clear direction on how to move forward. But these are just some examples of, what types of things you'll see moving forward. So a couple of years ago, the city was doing camps. Boys and Girls Club was in the area there already providing that service. So we said, why are we doubling an effort that a community champion's already doing? And so we moved those over to Boys and Girls Club. They're a wonderful aspect of the community, and it's ultimately, it saves the city money. A in a small way over at Copper Sky, we were offering personal training. Again, staff bandwidth, time, money. We actually created a new offering to where people could essentially pay us a fee and they could operate their personal training business essentially independent of the city. So that service is still offered to members of the community without any additional strain on the city. And there's some trainers that are, they're really loving it. We've had new trainers step up to the plate, so that's been great to see. Another example is CCV. We previously have run movies in our pool over at Copper Sky, but we actually partnered with CCV, and they actually paid for our staff, and they ran the whole event. They paid for the licensing to provide the movie, and they made it free to the public. And so again, that saved us time, it saved us money, but it was still a wonderful offering, and people loved it. I was there with my little 18-month baby, and we loved it. It was awesome. And another one that is super exciting, and you'll see an announcement here on this in the next week or two, but we actually partnered with Boat Rentals of America. So you'll see right now a floating dock is being constructed on Copper Sky. Boats have been delivered, but this service is an idea that was originally brought forth by the city, and the original thought was, are we as a city running this? We were fortunate enough to find someone who has done this, they're experts, and we've partnered with them to where all of the operations are on them. They shared costs of getting this started, and moving forward, there's almost no time or money from the city's perspective to devote to this. So again, all of these examples are, hey, we have some wonderful things happening in the community, but in a durable way, it's reducing our time, our money to then devote to other more important, not necessarily more important, but other priorities that the city has, including, roads and things of that nature. That concludes the strategic framework portion. Is there any questions, or do we want to keep moving, save the questions for the end?
It might be good to have questions on individual pieces, I think. Perfect. Councilmember Noor, you look like you
have questions?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for the presentation. And I know that we did go over this at future planning as well, but I feel like this is definitely has more meat to the bones in terms of what the direction that this strategic framework would go. So I appreciate that clarification. I do have some questions, and I did email some earlier. And I think it's important, Council, that we really dive into this, because the way I read it, it is going to be a significant, it could be a significant change to the way that we are currently operating. And I'm not saying that that is a bad thing. That is an opinion if you think it's a good direction or a bad direction. But what I'm saying is I think it's important for us to really dive into this strategic framework so that we understand what the implications could be. And again, as David mentioned, they're going to evaluate things as we go forward. He's not saying we're absolutely changing to all private all the way right now, but the way this strategic framework is set up, should those partners come, this framework and these policies say we do it, right? They say then we would go with the private entity. And so that could, correct me if I'm wrong, David, include Copper Sky in the operations of the gym and the pool. Right? Because operating a gym and a pool is not covered under number 4, which says the city should only be involved in activities that benefit a significant portion of the community, specifically parks, open spaces, trails, playgrounds, dog parks, libraries, play courts. Also, I was wondering, what are play courts?
Pickleball courts, basketball courts, things of that nature, sand volleyball courts.
So those, okay, that's actually interesting. I didn't realize. So the policy would say that those should be little to no fees, should be charged for the courts. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, first of all, let's this is not a policy, is that correct? Let's define that first, because a policy is something that you use to follow in terms of your processes, whereas a framework is, in my mind, an ideology. So I think we need to.
Yeah, I would like clarification on that for sure.
There certainly is a little bit of flexibility in here, and that's why we framed it as a strategic framework, because, and I want to mention a couple things because you mentioned a lot of different things. I do want to say this is not something that we can do tomorrow. This is something that's going to take probably 2 to 3 years to really truly evaluate, hey, is this getting us where we want to be? So this isn't, we drop what we're doing, we get rid of everything. That's not at all what we're saying. This is going to take time. We're going to evaluate things one at a time. Maybe we start with soccer, see how that goes for a season or two, reevaluate. Do we want to try this with some of our other offerings? So again, this is not something we're doing tomorrow. It's just saying we're going to explore those things. But going back to point 4, we did mention those specific items, but point 5 does allow a little bit of flexibility, because we may as a city find certain activities that we deem to be so valuable to the city that we still move forward. And that's exactly what point 5 does. It's, hey, we're not saying we're only ever going to do just what's listed in point 4. It just means we pause and say, okay, is this truly what we want to get involved in? And then if we say, yes, we do, we then say, okay, what's our first step once we've identified something that we truly think is of such benefit to the city that we move forward with? Well, let's first check, see, is this offered by nonprofit or private sector entities? We do our research. Maybe we find there's no one in the community who's interested in this. We haven't found any entities elsewhere who are interested in providing something. So, okay, we're going to move forward as a city and provide this, and we're going to price it appropriately as that is. And then as we do it, we're continuously evaluating. If there's ever a point where maybe originally we found that no one was available to provide something, if in the future we've been doing something for 3-5 years, but now there is somebody who can take it over, there's multiple entities who are interested in it, we would then have to evaluate that, and if it made sense, we would then partner with them or just give it to them to run. There was a few different questions in there. What question did I not answer? I'm confident that there's 1 or 2. I can't remember. I apologize.
No,
Was that
I think
sufficient?
that's sufficient for that question, but I do want clarification from Ben, I guess, or Quinn on if this is what a strategic framework means, because my belief was we were going to adopt this at some point as a vote, which makes me believe it will have force.
Yes, and Councilmember Noor, a lot of your questions I think are extremely important, and that's the point of the work session, is to get to the heart of that. And asking that question, is this designed or set up to have the enrichment department out of recreation? No, that's not the intent. It's, again, what I was mentioning originally. How can we amplify? I think, as we've talked about, this creates that space for doing that and sets that expectation for staff. 2 things will have to happen. 1, an evaluation of the current offerings, and then consideration for future offerings. Part of that consideration absolutely will be cost. And what we're looking at, you take an opportunity like the pedal boats. So that's a perfect example. We have the city said, we see an opportunity here. We'd love to offer this for our residents. And they're interested in purchasing everything that is required for that, staffing it, and all those things necessary. It's going to cost X amount of dollars. Then that next question, well, what is the city going to charge for that? Maybe we say, it's so important to us, we want this offer. Maybe it's free. Maybe we say, hey, we want a cost recovered to this much. When we go to partner, when we stop and ask first, we say, hey, part of our strategic framework is that we first look and see who else is out there, who might do this. Oh, we have a group that's interested in doing it, not just any group, a group that has a reputation of excellence for providing this. Now, they are a business, so they're going to need to recover their costs and maybe make a profit. What are they going to charge? Okay, they're going to charge X. Now we need to evaluate. Is it more important for us to say we want our residents to have this quality of life option at little or no cost? Or do we want to open that door for the private industry to be successful in there? That's where that thriving and durable competition that we're talking about is going to come in play as we look to invite more in. This is our framework to say, staff, we want you to, as opposed to just saying, we're going to go grab it all and do it ourselves, we want you to stop and make part of the process. What else is out there? What are they bringing to the table? Because maybe they do cost more, but maybe if you take something like soccer, for example, maybe they're securing sponsorships that provide awesome uniforms. Maybe their coaches get a higher level of training. Maybe they're attached to a feeder program that allows them to have recreation, but then connect directly towards a league or professional opportunities. So all those things we'll need to consider, bring and have this conversation collectively and say, what do we want to do? And when we find that their offering is suitable for that need, we say, yes, it's close enough to the cost that we want. It is providing an excellent amenity for our residents. We then have to have that evaluation as well of, is this something they can already do today, day one? They can just come in and be providing the service. All we have to do is move aside. And then the next part of what we'll get into here in a second is partnerships. Do they need a catalyst? Can the city use its resources? And David mentioned a couple times the word strain on the city. I want to be clear, we don't mind strain. We're happy to sweat and work. Again, when I'm getting back to what I'm saying, amplifying, by us moving out of the way, can we make two services? As opposed to us just doing this, okay, if we're able to allow you to bring your resources in, that allows us to redirect somewhere else, and what that might be. And all of that will need to be considered, but this is that framework. This is that guiding principle for staff to say, we want you to consider these things, and they'll have to be presented and calculated on an individual basis.
It will what? Wait, can you clarify? What did
We'll have to evaluate them on an individual basis.
staff will?
And with, of course, with every offering that we have, I think council's pretty involved in. We share that with you, and we'll be sharing those options with you of, again, take an example like soccer. Do we want to look at something a little bit more, a private group that says they're going to charge more and has all those offerings, or do we want to offer it at lower cost and subsidize it? What do we want to do here? We're thriving, durable. We need to establish that together. But this is, again, saying we don't want you to just focus on thriving. We want you to also consider durable. How can we invite that in a responsible way, have more in the city? Hope that sheds a little bit more light on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And our conversation earlier was helpful too. But again, I need, it's just who I am. I need to understand how this process will work, because the way I understand it is if we move forward with the strategic framework, this is the guiding principle that staff's going to use to make decisions. And how, Quinn, I love that you say that the council will be involved in that, but how? Because we don't consider these things in council meetings, and that's kind of a day-to-day business activity that council's not involved in. And so that doesn't give me comfort, not because I don't trust you, Quinn, but because that's not the way council operates. That's not the way council government operates. And so the way the strategic framework is set up causes me concern, because it is a significant change from the way we are currently doing business. And I have to understand what those implications are going to be and how it's going to look before I can get behind something that's, such a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I understand thriving and durable, and I appreciate that immensely. But like I said, I don't feel like I understand the full implications of this. I mean, speaking of soccer, and I appreciate that you put soccer as the probably first one you're going to look at to privatize. 7, 8-year-olds, I can't remember what it was, but I think it was 7, 8-year-old boys soccer for the city sold out in 4 hours. This season, okay? This season, it sold out in 4 hours. So that's how many people, there's probably a wait list, 50, 60 kids long. Now, what does that mean when we go to privatize it? What does it mean? Does it mean more kids are going to be able to do it and it won't sell out? Does it mean it's going to sell out faster? Does it mean it's going to be more expensive so less kids can do it so it doesn't sell out? Again, not that any of those answers are wrong, but this is going to have a big impact on the people of Maricopa. And so I appreciate the work session so much, Mayor, because I think when we're talking about these things, it's really important that we dig into the details and understand what we're doing.
100%.
And if I may, Councilmember Nort, two things to what you're saying. First, appreciate you mentioning and recognizing, yes, this is significant. That's why we've taken so much time and effort, why we're having the work session. So acknowledging that. And two, this is why we're here. This is the work session to say, so if there's some kind of a mechanism that we need to look at to say, hey, as the city does this, what I'm saying of, hey, we have all this is what they're proposing, this is what we're looking for. Typically what we do when we have a group that might be interested in, we open up an RFP, say which groups might be interested, what are their proposals, what are they offering, what are they bringing. If we need a mechanism in place to say, okay, once that evaluation's been made, it's shared with council before decisions are made, this is the time to be talking about what that assurance of before we approve, what does that look like? I think this is the right time to be exploring that.
So what I'm hearing you say is that this framework is just I'm not even sure which word to use, but basically a guideline to determine how we can make evaluations on what the city does versus what private groups do. And when it comes to considering the quality of the program, even if they came in at a lower cost, but the quality is not as good as what the city would offer, that would be evaluated. Or if they came in at a higher cost, is the resident getting more for their dollar because the quality is better? It's an evaluation process guideline that staff will look at, and there's no requirement based on this framework to accept bids that we don't think work for our city.
And according to number 5, yes, if we need to adjust to make that clear, we can certainly do that.
Yeah. But I think number 4 says the city should only be involved in activities. And then it lists a couple things. And we are offering a lot more activities than those things right now.
Mayor?
Yes.
Quinn, am I right in thinking that this framework is a living, breathing thing that's going to grow and evolve with the city? It's not locked down?
I don't see a word of it ever. Oh, Marsh, of course. Yes, absolutely. Again, as we continue to reach this point of growing so fast, this is a time when we're pausing and saying, okay, how are we going to build moving forward? At different points, we may say it's appropriate for us to step out of the way for this or that. It's a little difficult to crystal ball every opportunity that might be ahead of us. This is giving staff that direction of saying, do you want to take ownership of everything, not really look back? No, we'd like you to consider what other opportunities are out there, either regionally or especially locally.
Good,
yes,
thank you.
Living, breathing, 100%.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, David, for the presentation. And I'm grateful to hear a little bit about the RFP process. That was going to be my question. I'm very excited to be able to provide, amplify, I like the word that you use there, those services and those opportunities, and a greater opportunity for our residents to be able to participate in those by partnering with others. But my concern is, too, how do we pick those partners in a fair way that we're not picking and choosing who's the winner, who's the loser. And so the RFP process, I think, would be an important way to go. There are other avenues that you've explored that would be equally fair in that process, or is it mainly the RFP process that we're looking at?
I'd say it depends a lot, Councilmember Gettle, on what specifically you're talking about, but usually where city resources are considered, the city looks to offer that opportunity to any who might be interested. We're going to allow some of our subsidy to help boost you, to help see you be successful, we want to give that opportunity fairly to what groups.
Thank you.
And as part of that RFP process, it's taken into consideration what kind of experience they have. Have we worked with them in the past? What have been the successes and failures there? Are they able to achieve what we are specifically asking for? Are they proposing something different? What are the pros and cons of that? And depending on what project you're talking about, that may involve conversation with that various staff. That's usually elevated to include senior leadership as well, and oftentimes council members as well.
Thank you. And Councilmember Noor brought up some of the issues, too, that I have with the cost. There's been a lot of focus on reducing costs to the taxpayer, which I agree with, but I also want to make sure that we protect the cost to the participant as well in ways that are appropriate. And I think by offloading or providing these services through a nonprofit or through a private entity, there may be some cost raises in the part of the participant. Has there been any discussion on perhaps offering a scholarship for some of those, maybe on a need-based scale, that the city could help with to help expand the reach of those programs to those who currently enjoy them?
Councilmember Gettle, I'm elated to hear that question because I think so much is on the table with this framework. This is, as Councilmember Marsh again pointed, living, breathing. This is giving the staff that direction that they need to say, let's begin that exploration. We've dipped our toe in this and found all kinds of groups interested in going on their own when we step out of the way, stepping up when we have programs that we haven't done at all. David mentioned pickleball, and he mentioned that family playing pickleball. If you looked right next to him, you could see me losing. It was bad. But that kind of thing we were talking about as well today. If the city is making an investment, a subsidy to a sport, just use as an example of $30,000, and a private group says, well, we're going to come in and we're going to charge because we need to make a profit, and that will increase the cost for the participant X amount of dollars. I think this, certainly the conversation is available to say, well, if that's going to save the city $30,000, maybe we want to pay $10,000 to subsidize it and lower the cost for the participant. There's so many options that we're just beginning to explore. I think we need to see what groups are out there, what their offer is, what we're looking for, and that's what we're going to talk about next in the partnerships. So this is talking about, going and looking to see what else is out there. Next is taking a look a little more funneled in and say, well, that's what they're looking to bring. What do we want, and how are we going to explore that? But I think your question, absolutely, Councilmember Gettle, there's a lot of exciting options on the table for making those things work, both for, we want to take those things into consideration. We want the quality of life, we want it to be sustainable and thriving. How do we balance those?
Yeah, thank you for those answers.
So Quinn, going back to Councilmember Noor's question on item 4, I could see how that is somewhat startling. And if it said the city's goal should be involved, the goal should be to be involved in activities that benefit a significant portion of our community, is that less worrisome, Councilmember Noor? If it said, it should only is the part I think that, yes. The only part is.
The only is concerning, and also, I just don't agree that we should only be involved in those 7 or 8 things. And I also don't understand how play courts should be offered at free to little cost, but soccer fields shouldn't. I'll have to understand that later, because I guess if you play pickleball, you get to play for free, but if you play soccer, you have to pay.
It seems like you could also add as examples park and open spaces.
Right.
Because it shouldn't be an exhaustive list. I agree with you. Yes, Jennifer?
So 2 pieces to that. One, on that number 4, what if we did something like the city will prioritize activities that benefit? So it's not the only, but that we're prioritizing those things. And really what that list is those are items that a private citizen in general can't do on their own. So I know some people have pickleball courts in their backyard. Not many, but you can't have, it's rare to find a full basketball court in your backyard. It's rare to find all those items. Oh yeah, let me go back to what 4 is. Playgrounds, trails, all those things. So those are things that the the common citizen on their own or the private sector is not going to necessarily build. And so we want to prioritize those first because that's what the private sector generally does not take care of. And so that's prioritizing those. On the play courts and the soccer fields and all that, what is meant at little to no cost on the play courts is when you just walk up to play. So when you just walk up to play, you're like, hey, guys, want to go out and play volleyball today? Let's go see if a court's open, or want to go play pickleball, or want to go play soccer? Let's go see what's open. So that means you could show up and it could already be being used. So that's what that means. If you want to say, I want to use it from 4 to 5, Monday and Wednesday, that has a fee associated with it because you're essentially taking that ability away from somebody else to just walk up and play. So hopefully that gives a little clarity, but I don't know if the prioritizing
Does the word
would help.
prioritize work better, or do you have
Yeah,
others?
I'm more comfortable with prioritize.
Yeah, I
yes.
agree. I agree. Okay, Vice Mayor, yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate the
We're just
information.
getting started.
I'm curious just that once it's identified that there's a need from an organization coming forth, a nonprofit, what is the mechanism that they attach to help them to make it through the process, costs, and I think maybe might be a question for a city manager, is that person, is that organization submitting requests towards the city, to your function of the city? How does that absolutely work for the person who's out there that wants to take part in that?
I think that's a perfect segue into the next part of talking about partnerships, because again, there's groups that are able to just, they call us and say, can I start a sand volleyball league? So they're not looking for any assistance from us to be successful. They hear the fee, they're great, I'm ready to structure that, I'm ready to do that. The next piece is groups that say, we may have the ability to offer something that the city would really like, but we might need some help getting that started. And the city has some bandwidth and resources to do that. The Community Enrichment Department, as we facilitate these offerings, does receive those requests and there's always quite a range of them. Again, that's why the strategic framework is important, so that we have some ability to filter a little bit, because we get requests almost daily. So which ones, and we're always open to any suggestion that can come forth, and will be evaluated. And is this something the city wants to do enough? Okay, we may need to look at an RFP process and take it through that end. What I hope to talk about next is when the city says, as opposed to open the doors and whatever is going to come and bring us what you have, which happens anyway, here's how we want to go approach specific offerings. So I think that'll come a little bit more in light as we take that next step. But I don't want to pass over if anyone has any more questions.
Any more questions on?
And Vice Mayor,
I
if I may, real quickly.
Yes.
Everything that happens would occur under our procurement code. So if if we're going to get a new vendor to do X, Y, or Z, that's going to have to follow our procurement code, whether that's a request for proposal, whether that's under the limits of spending that we have into the different categories. So no matter what that process is, it would still have to follow our general procurement code.
Makes sense.
Councilman Nor, I would like to go back to your topic of city council awareness. I think that is important because this is so big and so new that I don't want to hear things on the street that happened. I would like to have an awareness. I don't think it's necessarily something that we have to vote on, but I think having a heads up that this is what's being talked about, this is what's being strategized, and allowing us to have opportunities to provide feedback is important. Does that make sense to your request as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, and agreed. And I think that's been the habit as well so far. I don't think any offering that the city has, like Boys and Girls Club, that move was made without City Council's awareness, and that pattern would continue. Especially if we're talking about a big offering that the city already has, soccer, flag football, any of these things. If we find a private group that says interested, that will be discussed.
Okay.
I would say they would be discussed first with council to see if they were interested in proceeding.
Yeah, it's already out there. Yeah. Councilmember Noor?
Yeah, just one other thing that I emailed about that Ben did provide clarification on, but I just want it to be on the record, is on number 5, it says and I appreciate David saying that it was changed from futures planning based on my feedback, and I appreciate that. But I'm still not comfortable with market rate, that word. I think Ben suggested something like at a rate comparable to other cities or something, and I like that better. Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about that, may include what other cities and private industry of taking a look at what they're charging.
Be inclusive of both.
Which doesn't necessarily mean we need to follow, but that we're
Right.
aware of it. And that, again, that puts the onus, that responsibility on staff to do some research and
Yep.
say, what are others charging? And if we want to break significantly from that, either to charge significantly less or significantly more, what's the value? What are we getting? Why are we doing that? And have that conversation.
What additional comments on this particular item? Anything?
Mayor,
Yes.
one other idea, and I haven't run this through the team yet, so they may want to shoot me after. But one of the other processes that we'll talk about today are the committee structures. And there are ways where we can involve the committees through these
Excellent.
processes as well. And
Yep.
and I think let's get to some of that other things that we
Yep.
have on the agenda as well, and keep that in mind and see where all this discussion goes. Ultimately, our goal is to kind of as Quinn led off, enhance the quality of life within the community. I think there are ways to do that through offering a diverse set of programming and through providing additional recreational opportunities, whether that's through groups coming in and offering things that we don't currently do, or offloading, offloading some of the things that we do, which allows us to offer additional amenities. But really, the goal of the framework is to say, hey, what are we going to do today so that we can advance our framework or advance our offerings moving forward. And so hopefully, some of the committee discussion later or the partnership discussion will start to factor into this discussion, will help clarify some of those things as well.
I think that's perfect. The only thing I'll add, and this is actually not specific to this item, it could be specific to all 3 items, is because so much of this is new, maybe definitely an annual report, like how are we doing, what are we, maybe twice a year to start with, I don't know, but I would like to have more information than less information. Anyone okay. Yep. All right.
And again, that's naturally happening as well as futures planning. We're saying, hey, here's some of the successes, here's some of that. So we're saying as we're really looking to run towards this, absolutely. What are the fruits that we're seeing of that? Are we seeing the successes that we want? Do we need to change strategy? So.
Perfect.
And Quinn, it sounds like we're moving forward step by step, slowly, perhaps, as we make some of these partnerships. We're just immediately made aware, hey, this is something that we're moving towards, and we're excited about it for this reason, just so that we're kept in that loop throughout the year.
And again, work session, this is, I think, based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like we might need a mechanism somewhere in here that makes that clear, that major changes or approaches to our current offerings are shared with council ahead of approval. We're totally open to that, and we can take that note and explore what that looks like, where to put that.
Okay, ready to move on to partnerships? All right.
So that question of we're looking to have more, are there some groups that are interested in providing services that may need some assistance to get things started? Again, the idea being here that the city's resources, time, staffing are finite. So whatever, if we were going to assume something, if some other group were going to assume some responsibility for something, if we partner with them and that's something we're always doing, then that again keeps our resources finite versus being able to help them reach sustainability on their own. So this partnership policy, which again, we are always receiving requests for partnerships from a variety of different ways, but how can we search out the things that we're looking for? So this is going to tie to what Angela's going to talk, or excuse me, what Travis is going to talk about in a minute with committees, because how are we going to get this feedback? But let me just read this through here. So the City of Maricopa seeks to increase quality of life and promote sustainable growth through targeted partnerships in the following 3 priorities. These were suggested during futures planning, and they are certainly, again, adjustable. 1. But we have heard a lot of feedback in the area of senior services, what offerings, programs, amenities for our senior residents, community art projects, and teen-focused services and programs. Those were 3 that we hear a lot. If council decides they've got other areas that they're interested in, we can certainly explore those. But again, in committees is where we're going to be looking to determine some of what our needs are. So through these targeted partnerships, we aim to create collaborations that contribute to the city's sustainability, economic vitality, and community well-being. Includes an evaluation of what the partnering organization is bringing to the table. All partnerships should have a clear end date or a business model that leads to their full self-sufficiency. So again, the idea being, if there's something that's prohibiting, or there's an offering that we want, what's keeping that from happening already in the city? Let's understand that. And then is there something the city can do to alleviate that and set them up to be sustainable in the future? I think if we'll just keep proceeding, if anyone had questions on this part, the next part, talking a little bit about programming and separating that out, and have Angela present that part. But any questions before I proceed?
I have one question.
Yes.
So we said seniors, community art projects, teen-focused, and you said it's flexible. We can modify, change as we see needed. But what I really like, and I just want to draw attention to, is Section 5, expanding Maricopa Library and Cultural Center programming, and I'm sure that's through Angela, because that allows for so much more activity, culture, reading programs, so many opportunities at the library. So I'm excited about that. So I don't want to just think that it's just these 3 things. It grows into the library as well.
And that, Mayor, the programming that she'll present, we're also discovering that there's a lot of groups that are able to provide some programming. They might have not a sustained need from the city of, we need marketing for 3 years or anything like that. Like, we just need to meet to talk about this once a month.
Yes.
We want to, Angela's going to talk a little bit about that, finding ways to let that happen in a way to increase programming there. So
Perfect.
if you're good with that,
Any other questions on these 3? Yes, Councilmember Marsh.
Yeah, I agree with the senior services.
I thought
when the 44,000 commuters go into Chandler every morning, seniors run this town.
During the day?
We got to have programs to keep them out of trouble. The community arts projects, that's perfect. The teen-focused services and programs, yeah, we can do that in cahoots with various school systems. There's one more group I'd like you to consider. That is the young moms with children. They're an undercurrent in the town, but they're also like seniors. They're isolated in their homes with their kids. It's nice to get them together and have programs for them too.
It's an excellent suggestion. Again, what Travis will speak about in a minute is how do we understand what our biggest needs are? How can we use the committees to help us gather some of that information? And then how do we serve that need?
Yeah.
Are there groups already ready to do that? This is where that framework again kicks in. Are there groups already to do it? No. It's a huge need in our community. Maybe we need to look at doing that. Wait, it's a huge need and there's a group already ready to do it? Perfect. Let's make that marriage happen.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Manfredi, did you have a question? Okay. Councilmember Noor?
Thanks, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Quinn. I'm a details person, you know this. So it says all partnerships should have a clear end date or a business model that leads to their self-sufficiency. But like currently, we have a partnership with Little League. Do we see that having a clear end date or leading to its self-sufficiency?
That's an excellent question, and I think this will be fleshed out a little bit more in conversations that we'll have in a future work session about pricing. But we're looking in that to create a model that can be applicable to all of the groups that fall in that range. So we wouldn't need a specific agreement with them. We know that the value that they bring, we know the tier of who they're able to serve. We're going to say this is the deal that they can get, and any group that would be willing to do that as well can be considered for the same deal.
So then Little League wouldn't be in a partnership
Correct. You
under
wouldn't-
that new model?
Exactly, and you wouldn't need that clear end date. That would be them saying, we want in because we don't want to have this anymore. But it wouldn't necessarily be a partnership, it's just them running it. But if they were to approach us and say, hey, I need 3 years of subsidization, okay, when
That's
we
a
make that
partnership.
agreement, I want that date on there so that it's clear later when they say, how come this went away? Remember day one, we said you need to be, and by the way, of course, we may consider at that time extending it if it's a huge enough value, but that we want to have that in there when we start.
No, I actually love that we're going to have a model that everybody can get the deal Little League gets if they qualify as Little League
Yes.
does. Great, thank you.
It's a
Very
great
good.
question.
Good question. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, please continue.
Okay, I'll turn some time over to Angela to talk about the programming at the library.
Got to really adjust the mic. Good evening, council and mayor. We've separated this. It's the first time using the clicker. Nope. I'm going to mess it up. Oh,
Big green one.
I chose that little green one.
There's one more. Big green one.
Good afternoon. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Angela Howell. I am the library manager. I need to fix that. I am the Maricopa Library and Cultural Center manager. We separated this out a little bit from the partnerships because so much of the library is about programming and partnering and collaborating. So in order to make it understandable in the fact that this is different from the partnerships like Quinn was discussing, we've used some different terminology, some different vocabulary. So we've said collaboration of programs. So libraries, the primary goal of libraries is to encourage and develop literacy. You know, libraries aren't just about books though. There's all kinds of literacy, financial, cultural, digital literacies. And those are things that the library focuses on, those kind of programming. So programming collaborations help expand and enhance community programs by partnering with organizations, businesses, and individuals. These collaborations provide valuable activities, events, and services that can benefit both the City of Maricopa and its residents. While partners gain visibility, the city doesn't endorse or endorse any specific products or services by those individuals, okay? So collaborations give us a way to meet the needs of the community. Libraries, we kind of help fill gaps in educational resources regardless of their socioeconomic status. So that doesn't, everything we try to do, we try to provide at free or at little cost so that everybody can experience and benefit from it. In order for us to do that, we have to have collaborations with individuals. We're not experts on everything like finances or wills, those kind of things, but we can collaborate with other groups and individuals that can bring that expertise into the library or into a program and allow us to offer it to the community very free and low cost. It's important to note that collaborations have to align with the mission and policies of the city. So it's not just about anybody coming in and saying, I want to do a program on gift basket making. And we just go, okay, here's a room, here you go. We don't do that. This slide here talks about program planning requirements. So with us at the library, we have a whole process with our programmers and our staff at the library on how we decide what kind of programs to offer. And that includes, honestly, a bunch of paperwork. We have a bunch of planning paperwork. We want to ensure that the quality and the efficiency of the program is what the community expects from the city and the Library and Cultural Center. So some of the required details that we require in order to do a program is it has to have goals, it has to have a target audience, it has to have start and end dates. So most of our library programs, we do them on 8-week basis or 8-class basis. That way, if it's not a one-off, we do the one-off things like a speaker or a book reading or something like that. But we do try really hard to assess a program in an 8-week time frame. So any programs that come in, we look at it over the course of that 8 weeks. Was it successful? Did it help the community? Was it something that the community actually wanted? Because we get told all the time, yeah, we want this, but then we do a program for it and 3 people show up. So we have a very specific start and end date to any programs that we do, and so any of our collaborators would have to have that as well. We also are very specific on what are the budget and staff needs for it, lesson plans or agenda. So collaborative programs, they're volunteer-led, essentially, but they're managed by the city staff.
Could you elaborate on that? I'm really curious. That's not how I envisioned it, so if you could elaborate on that.
Well, okay, so what part? The volunteer city?
Managed by the city staff, because...
City staff, so
yeah.
When somebody brings to us a program idea, they want to do this program, when I say managed by city staff, it means we look at what their, for lack of a better word, their lesson plan is for those, 8 programs or whatever. We've had a couple of instances where we've had community champions come in and want to provide a program because they're, very knowledgeable in it. Jaden Hill, he was one of our community champions, but he needed to be directed and helped in order to make it an actual efficient program. He came in with some great ideas and everything, but okay, this isn't going to work, or we need to do it this way, or 8-year-olds can't handle that level, those kind of things when I say managed by city staff.
So if I use just a simple example, I think you're familiar with the lady who would like to start a chess club. To me, perfect opportunity for a program, 8-week program. And she doesn't want to charge for it. And I don't see city staff managing that, but you're reviewing it and approving it, and that's the part that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the main part. When I say staff, we look at everything. It's not just somebody says they want to do something and we just give them a room.
Right.
We assess everything, all of the programs that come in, and so the collaborators need to understand that that's part of the process.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And do you have a good understanding at this point? I think you might, because you've done some programming in the past. How do you make those decisions? Like, what basis will you use to determine, yes, that's a good program, that's not going to fit perfectly? How do you make those determinations?
Well, we're not perfect at that.
Right.
I was going to say we've done some programming that's like, well, that didn't work. Nobody showed up for that. So we're not going to do something like that again, unless we adjust or we can find another way to do it. We really try to look at, first of all, things that have been requested. So, nobody's afraid of telling us we want this program, we want to learn this, we want to do that, because libraries really are a hub for that. So we look at things that we've had requests for. Sometimes we'll even go out and look for collaborators, people that offer these services and stuff, and we'll go look for them. So we've done that before. But we, first of all, try to assess whether or not it's something that the community actually wants. Then we look at, does it fall in line with what our mission is? So I probably wouldn't do a ballet program at the library.
Right.
Because that is not the function of the library. I might do a program that talks about the different cultural aspects of dance, but actually doing a ballet class, we're not set up for that. That's not the intent and the purpose of the library. So, a program like that, we would know. Does that kind of help answer some of that questions?
Helps. I think you do have a strategy.
Yeah.
Yes, Quinn?
When I talked about paperwork, we do have a full list of paperwork saying, okay, what's the lesson plan? What's staff requirements? What is the purpose? We ask for an outcome statement for any program that we have. So what is your purpose of providing this program? So that kind of helps us determine some of those things.
Yep. Perfect.
Well, she just addressed what I was going to say. They do
Okay.
have a form
Perfect.
with formulated questions that say, what's your marketing plan? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And then they can make that further evaluation. Have you been successful in these type of programs before? Who's come? They ask all those questions just to figure out if it's likely to be successful, because I don't know if she mentioned this yet, but when they assume a program, when the Library and Cultural Center assume a program, it becomes their program, even though volunteers are running it, which is why they want to have that evaluation. Is this achieving our mission and goals?
That makes perfect sense. What does budget and staff needs? I think I could guess what staff, but the budget piece of it, how do you see that working with a partner?
For example, I'll use, because you guys are all familiar with Jaden's program, the Astro Innovators, because he was a community champion, right? Yeah, no? So with Jaden's program, we provided, some of the materials needed for it. So we had Legos already, and he used the Legos to build the space station and that sort of thing. If we don't already have those materials, what do we need to buy and provide to do that? Usually with collaborations, they're providing their knowledge first and foremost. They're providing the information. So once in a while, there is a few, I wanted to include that because I don't want everybody to think that people are not going to necessarily come in and spend all this money for 20 people just because they've got a good heart. I mean, there is some that do, but there are some things that if we see that program has a lot of value, and that's, we're willing to buy a box of Legos to make that happen, then we would do that.
That
of
makes
course,
sense.
within our existing budget.
I was just going to throw that in there, Angela. You read my mind. Other questions, comments?
Council? No?
Okay.
All right.
Let's move to the next item.
Okay, so I think.
So I'd also just point out on what Angela presented.
Excuse me, Quinn.
Yes.
Vice Mayor had a comment that he'd like to
I'm
make.
sorry, before Angela goes away, I just want to comment on how flexible you are and how supportive you are of the community when it comes to use of the facilities. As long as you follow guidelines, that's important. But it's the face of the person that we come in contact with that makes the difference, and you put on a positive face. And it's appreciative.
She does.
Thank
I
you.
hear wonderful
Thank you,
things about Angela.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to point out a bit of a, is it still working? Can you hear me okay? It sounded like it shorted out when I touched it. Might need a new mic, Abel. Sounds like this one's not working. Walk back and give him the heads up because he can't hear me. Try the old turn it up. Shake it a bit.
Hey, Quinn, I'd appreciate it if you stopped breaking things.
It's all within the budget. We have it all budgeted. We're getting a partner for these right here. So. Hear me okay? Yes? Sounds like
that's
it's back.
better.
Awesome. Thank you. Hopefully I remember what I was going to say. So there's a bit of change here in what we're looking at is there was some groups that were interested in offering some programming in exchange for space. And what we had, at the time, a year ago, when we were taking a look at our rates, we said, we think our rates are very affordable. If you need to use it for that usage of meeting and space, that you will have to rent. and that excluded some groups. As we've had a chance to evaluate, we said we can explore that again of taking a look at it, and it will be part of what we will ask them to provide when we ask them those details. You're looking for to provide what program? If they say, I also have some needs, okay, what are those? And we'll have to evaluate. I need 1 day a month to do this. That might work. I need the library and cultural center every day for 6 weeks, twice. That might not work. So what their ask is will have to be taken into account.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't talk on that part of it. So we have done this before in the past with other groups, and in the last year or two, we've gotten completely away from that. But we have seen that that's a valuable tool for us.
100%.
Yeah. So they wanted me to have an example. We had a ham radio technician class. Okay, so that's I don't even know how to, the walkie-talkie type word, whatever. So that is an actual very technical certification, and you have to be certified in order to use it. And we have a huge community here that does that. So for a long time, they provided an actual technician class to teach people what was on the certification, and then they provided the certification to those individuals that took the class, and in return for them, devoting that, I can't remember if it was 6 to 8 weeks, for them devoting all of that time to teach that class and provide that test and certification for those individuals, we would like to be able to say, hey, yes, you can have your meeting here for 1 hour once a month. So that allows us to bring these groups in who, they need a little something, like the room to have their meeting once a month, but they're willing to provide us with so much that we can offer the community that we're not paying for. So, that 1 hour a month using the room, that's well worth what it would cost the city to bring somebody in to teach that technician class.
Beautiful.
Sorry, I
That's
forgot to talk
perfect.
about that part of it.
So again, just pointing back to those original 2 points of we're looking to amplify. How can we have more? Invite them in, make it achievable for them. I already forgot the second one, so I'll have Travis now come up, and he's going to be talking a little bit again about how we can use our committees to understand what some of our needs are and what opportunities might be out there.
Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing me to kind of give a presentation today. I am Travis Oren, and I have the privilege of serving as the Cultural Services Superintendent for the city. The team and I overlook the city events, community events, our event tourism, seniors, the senior center, the community center, veterans, and our arts. So tonight, I'm going to kind of just touch on some of the restructure, as mentioned earlier, of some of our advisory committees. But tonight, we're going to be talking about 3 specific committees. That would be the Cultural Affairs and Arts Committee, the Senior Advisory Committee, and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. So same goal. The goal for our committees are to be the bridge between city leadership and the general public, our Maricopa residents. But we want to kind of give them a focus and allow them to really have a lot of insight and kind of do some of our heavy lifting when it comes to researching and making decisions and shaping decisions for the city and prioritizing things for the city. At the same time, creating clear communication and also champions of what we have planned for the city. So, what will we ask them to do? Well, with the assistance of a staff liaison, the committees will be challenged to, and I'll just read off some of these bullet points here. Thank you, Quinn. Obtain feedback from the public on plans, policies, and programming. Conduct research on potential solutions. Engage with Maricopa residents in conversations and open up further communication channels. Provide recommendations to the city council and staff based on community input and their expertise in these areas. And then hopefully this will promote transparency, That means by keeping the community informed about our plans and some of our strategic goals. And then also, again, not them just being advocates, but creating advocates for our city initiatives and our strategic priorities. So I kind of want to just briefly put this into practice and kind of give a scenario of how this would play out. So if we just focus on one group right here, we're going to take the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, and we're going to give them a hot topic and see how they could help us. Like you said, I think it was Council Member Nora that said, if it's not city council or staff or who's making decisions, well, this is when these committees are going to be a absolute great resource to us, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be doing that deep research. If my team were to do that, it would be tasked with that, that would take hours and hours to do that. But having this committee members as resources, and they're really our ears on the street to really dig deep into these subjects and to get valuable, accurate information, that's going to help us make some good decisions and prioritize what we need to. So again, looking at the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, we'll have them dig deep into the topic of teens. Everybody's favorite subject, right? Teens. I got 2 at home, and I can tell you right now, teens are hard to please. I'm going to tell you, if I pick something for my teens right now, what dad picks is not cool. And what I thought was cool as a teen, they're not doing that anymore. And teens are ever changing by generation and generation. So having this research provided by our committees and letting them do the real work, they would basically dive in and do that research. Now, how do they do this research? Or again, it's engaging in the community. We can look for our resources locally. I see Be Awesome in the crowd right now. They're the ones dealing with generations of teens. So these advisory members can basically go to them, do research, not only Be Awesome, find other nonprofits or church groups, use the school as a resource, school counselors, or how about this, things that we can't get to, actual teens themselves, actually going to the people that are going to benefit and utilize these centers or programming that we try to expand. Right, so that would be a great resource to us. So I hope that answers a little bit of where we kind of see that shaping and the focus there. Well, I know this all sounds great, and again, trying to serve Maricopa more effectively and efficiently, but what will we need to do to kind of get rolling on these processes? Well, the next steps are pretty clear. Oh, go back there. The next steps are pretty clear. We would have to identify some staff liaisons. So I got the privilege to go ahead and announce that right now. The liaison for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee is my fellow superintendent for recreation, David McLeish. And I hate to break the news to the other two, the Senior Advisory and the Cultural Arts and Committee, but you're reuniting with our friend again here. That's myself. I get to serve again with you guys, so you thought you got rid of me, but I'm back. I look forward to getting to work with you folks again and really diving deep and doing some fun stuff. So after we have notified that, we're going to ask for a code change. We're going to look to do a resolution with goals, and then we can start getting to work and launch this. So I'm here to answer questions, and preemptively, I think Councilmember Marsh, yes, Wild West Music Fest is April 4 to 6, and Leanne Rhymes will be performing on Saturday. I hope I answered that question. But other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the new structure that we're presenting for committees.
What was the first answer, 4 to 6? What was that?
It's April 4 through 6.
Oh, April 4.
Yeah, April 4 to 6. Okay. Yes, Leanne Rhymes on Saturday, just to clarify again, make sure that's on record.
All right. Council, what questions do you have for Travis?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to add a little bit to what Travis had mentioned about having a staff liaison will, yes, again, help them understand what we're doing. And when we're talking about them doing research, these liaisons will be helping them understand what kinds of questions we want to be answering or are getting the answers to, what are our needs, and then when we say we have identified a need, when we go to look at what groups out there, what's preventing them from accomplishing that already right now? And if we say, we've already found in doing some of this, the answer was, I didn't know what the price was. And we told them, and they're like, oh, I'll start that next week. So it may be something as simple as that. Again, it may be them saying, I would need a room, I might need marketing. And that's where these staff liaisons will be working with them to understand what might be keeping them from that does the city have an opportunity to help them achieve that sustainability?
Councilmember Noor?
Yeah, Quinn, thank you. I really appreciate that because that was going to be one of my points is that I think the committees can serve as a great resource to help promote partnerships and find those groups, nonprofits, entities that can provide programming for the city and help let them know what's available and how the city can work with them. So I do love that we're adding that as one of like the tenets of the committees. I also think like Parks and Rec Committee should evaluate any privatization endeavors because while I do want to be informed as a council member and I don't like learning about things at the grocery store, so still do that, like they are the Parks and Rec Committee. So they should definitely have input into should we go with X, Y, Z, ABC, whatever it should be. And I definitely think that I would like to see them have a role in that going forward for sure.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I totally agree. When we talk about them being advocates or community champions for us, it's a two-way street. Not only are they champion and kind of explaining what we have planned, but we're also hearing real intel. So it helps us to mold decisions that are effective and also efficient, not just, assuming things and things like that. So champion on both ways. So that is a great resource for us. That was a great point.
Perfect. Vice Mayor?
I'm just curious how you plan to interface with the existing structure within those organizations with the staff liaisons, and how does that look to you? How does that interface take place?
As far as structure with the staff liaisons, Councilman?
And with the existing organizations, there are liaison, are there leaders, and they have vice chairs, chairs and vice chairs. They may even have other kind of structural organizations for their organization. How does the staff liaison interface?
The staff liaison, as much as possible, be hands-off and allow the advisory committee, if I'm not mistaken, allow the advisory committees to operate as they are. The staff liaisons are more of a guide to make sure that we're prioritizing some of the focus groups and putting our efforts into the places that we're trying to accomplish. So staff liaisons are more of a resource in addition as much as they are a resource to us. I hope that answered your question, sir.
Yeah, that's
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Did you have something to add, Quinn?
Yes, much as they functioned previously, not looking to supersede any of that current structure, as those committees already continue to run with their chairs and vice chairs, that they're able to turn and say, okay, what now from staff in this area? Can you please present to us what do you have, what do you need, what are you working on? What are we updating in these realms? What questions do you have for us? They're in the driver's seat. The staff liaison is there to help answer those questions and facilitate that conversation.
So Mayor, along
Yes.
that line, if I may, so I appreciate and I welcome that staff participation in that. But in the document that we did receive, there's a couple of places where the council liaison is actually removed. And so I want to make sure maybe we fix that a little bit. I'm looking specifically at the agenda process. The chair will work with staff liaisons to prepare the agenda, and council's been removed from that process. I would still like to retain that final say on what's on that agenda, if I can do that as a council member. And then secondly, under the goals section, prior to futures planning, staff liaisons with input from the committees will formulate set goals and objectives. I also would like to be a part of that process. So I don't want to see these committees become staff committees. I still want to retain them under our purview. So if we can be careful a little bit with that language and make sure that we're still included there and have that final say, I'd recommend.
Everyone okay with that? Okay, good suggestions.
And we have, the more the merrier. And like I said, with the council members, I've had a chance to sit on the advisories as it is, and you guys are a great resource. So it just makes it even more so unified.
Agreed.
So
Yeah, and I'm excited about the partnership from the staff
equally
side.
excited, sir.
It'd be great.
Councilmember Marsh?
Travis, thank you for nailing this down. Working with you and your team over the past year, we've kind of been evolving the Senior Advisory Committee in this direction. So this just solidifies the plan and locks down our course to true north. It's really cool. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And then, with our team, we are all equally excited to get back to work and to really be a resource just as much as they're a resource to us. So thank you, Councilman.
Travis, the one question I have is in regards to your little flow chart and goals. So if you use this year as an example, when we get this committee code put into place, how do you see the goals for our committees currently after we get this in place? How do you see those goals being established? Is it staff and council liaisons working with the committees?
I think that's where we would look to make that decision later together. And I
Yes.
hope that's
Okay.
what the main thing is. This is not an individual effort. This is a joint effort
Yes.
from everybody involved. And I
Perfect.
think that would be the best synergy. And like I said, we're just excited to get going on it and start working out those finer details.
Perfect. I'm excited about the staff liaison because although everybody's been working hard and doing their part, they're missing an element, and that is the staff liaison. So I'm excited about that. What I want to let council know, because we do have some open positions on our committees, please take this seriously in regards to, we are asking in some cases we have committee members who are working really hard. I mean, if you look at the Senior Advisory Committee, and what they did for Senior Info Expo, they're working really hard. But in some cases, current members may not understand what all is expected of them, so consider that. And when you fill these seats, please consider that. Ask those questions if they're willing to participate in this way, because I think that's what's going to make these committees marvelous. So that's my request there.
I love that request. I couldn't agree more, Mayor.
Yep.
I got to
Vice
give you
Mayor?
your flowers too as well, Travis. You've really been there for us and then on our side of the committees as well.
It's really easy for me to look good with a great team, sir. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate for your kind words.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
to help us fill those vacancies on the committees, can we get some help on the city's website with sort of a job description?
Segway Quinn Canold.
I'm also over communication, so absolutely. What our needs are, we'll work to address those.
Very good. Any finishing comments? Yes, Councilmember Gettle.
Yeah, there's another part of our committee process I think needs to be fine-tuned, and that is the mechanism for this committee to be able to advise council and to report back to council. And so that's been a frustration, and it hasn't been as seamless as I had hoped. And so under the member responsibility, members shall advise the council related to policy matters relevant to the scope of each given committee. What is the mechanism that we vision that taking? How does this happen?
Good question.
Is this a presentation during council meeting? Is this the futures planning presentation? What does that report and
City
advice
manager?
might look like?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Councilmember Gettle, I think the intent is that is the purpose of the council liaison being in that role, is that then, for example, in the call to the council during a regular meeting or as you're providing your council reports, that can be something that comes back. It also could be something that is placed on an agenda if it's something for action. These types of committees are different than, for example, our planning and zoning committee that has a statutory and a codified purpose where they are a necessary recommending board to the council. These types of committees are more meant to be at the convenience of the council that serves in that advisory role. And so as a council member liaison, as a vice liaison or whatever the assistant is, those would be kind of the responsibilities of those council members to bring back those reports, make the recommended suggestions in tandem now with staff and going through those processes.
I think there's really interesting things that happen in those meetings that I would love to know, so I would love to.
There are. And so I would recommend to our council that we consider making this a formal process and inviting our committees to participate, not just in a call to the public, but to actually be agendized at least once a year where they can come and give us a report. Like you mentioned, Mayor, they've worked hard, and I'm really proud of a lot of the things that they've accomplished. Let's give them an opportunity to share that success with council and with our public, and also to advise us specifically on some of those things. Maybe it's about those recreational partnerships, or whatever the topic is of the day, but having a formal mechanism for them to be able to present and to have a dialogue so that it's agendized, I think is an important part of this process.
So you see that possibly happening in November, December at a council meeting where it has an agenda item and they give a report of the year. Because during the futures meeting is when we'll understand their goals for the coming year. So you would like to hear a report at the end of the year by the committee.
Or just prior to the futures planning meeting to close that previous year out.
Yeah.
Or as needed, as something pops up during the year.
Or as needed, yeah.
Or as needed.
Agreed.
Council, how do you feel about that? Councilmember Noor?
I think it's really important that the council hears from the committees at least once a year about what they are doing and what they are accomplishing, and if they have concerns, et cetera. They really are taking on a lot. I mean, I'm involved with Cultural Arts and Affairs, and they do the art exhibit, the library. It's a lot of work, just that, and they do other things too. And so I think it's important for us to, and I think we're going to utilize them more with this new change, and so I think it's going to be even more important.
I agree. Let's talk later. He's making deals with me up here. Okay, so given that, nothing else from council? You answered a lot of my questions. I think a lot of others' questions from the council. Did we leave anything unanswered that the public would like to say? Peg, I hear you. Would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. A lot to unpack. A lot of stuff was covered. I think the easiest way for me to do this is just tell you up front, I'm going to be critical. I heard a lot of great ideas, but that's all I've heard. And a lot of it seems to be coming from the city's perspective. I think if you're going to use your committees, it starts with the 7 of you. What do you see as our value? What can we contribute? You have an awful lot of citizens here that want to get involved in local government. It's also my understanding that over the years, we've thought of our committees as our recruiting base. Folks that need to take up these seats or fill other committee vacancies, apply for a job at the city, and that's actually happened where you've had people serving in different capacities that now work for the city of Maricopa. So I think that's the first question. I think the next issue comes down to an issue of trust. We trust you that if you win our votes, you're our voices up there. You're the ones that set the policy. You're the ones that ask the hard questions. You're the ones that do the deep dive. I can't tell you how thrilled I was when the mayor announced a work session. I haven't seen one of those in ages, and I miss them. Having served on both sides of this podium, I know the importance of what you guys are trying to do. I understand the importance of what staff does on running the city on a day-to-day basis. But I think there's a lot of people, and sometimes it's a misperception, sometimes it's dead on. There's a disconnect. And the disconnect happens when I don't hear what you think, what you expect, what you want, or what you think I want or expect. One of the things that I found missing in some of the comments that were made tonight is responding to the needs of your citizens. We are still only a 23-year-old city. We have a lot of needs and a lot of wants. We have tons of challenges. We have people that come from other places that have all these things that we don't. We have people that come with fresh ideas, inventive ideas, connections to the entrepreneurial world, connections to funding, connections to other entities that can help us bring these things. I think it's important that we ask them as a community, what do you want and need? Now, it's not going to be the be-all, end-all. We used to do a citizen attitude survey every 2 years. I found the results of those surveys very, very interesting. You have to look at a lot of different factors when you're doing that, But just the fact that you have people that are willing to come to the microphone, willing to speak up, sometimes it's misperceptions, sometimes it's not accurate information, but I think that's an important quality that a city has. Over the years, the one thing that's been consistent is what is one of our greatest assets, and it's always been our people. I think if we start to downplay that or redirect it or take it for granted, we're going to be on a slippery slope that's not going to end well. In terms of the committee approach, I love the fact that you guys are being proactive. I want to particularly thank Councilmember Gettle for the committee reboot that he started a couple years ago right after he got appointed. Also Councilmember Noor, she's been very, very good as an advocate, and her experience on the school board I think is carried over very well here. All of you do a good job, but your committees are something that I've felt over the years, and this is not new. You've heard me talk about this when I was on council. You've got to give us clear direction. You've got to give us some goals. It shouldn't all come from us. It should be a collaboration. I've heard that word a lot tonight, and I think that's one of the things that's missing. The other factor is we need to tell you what we're working on, because we need to feel that we're providing a service and providing value to you, and I think you need to hear that as well, especially around election time. We do have the public's ear. We get asked a ton of questions. We are always trying to defend our roles and our council and our staff and our city in terms of why can't the city do? Why doesn't the city have? Why can't the city spend money on this? There's a number of different reasons. I think the Citizens Leadership Academy needs to be expanded beyond 4 weeks. When I took the first one, Vice Mayor was there with me. Nancy, you were there with me. It was 8 weeks, and we did a deep dive. We don't do that anymore. The fact that the city clerk's department isn't even included in that, to me, is very telling. Almost everybody in the city at one point or another will interface with the city clerk's office. Going back to the committees, the reporting and our goals is important for a thing that's been missing, but I know you guys have been talking about it: budget, recognition. You ask if we could use the city resources to let people know there's vacancies on the committees. How about we let the community know we have committees? There's a number of people that we deal with, and most recently was Copa Cultural. We had tents there. We had our Cultural Affairs and Arts Committee there doing a survey. A lot of people came up and said, I didn't even know we had a committee on the arts and culture. I didn't know we had a senior advisory committee. I didn't know we had Parks and Rec. We've been asking for brochures, we've been asking for additional marketing, we've been asking for city support. We've been met with either frustration or we can't do that right now, or just a plain no. If it's that important, then let's tell the people about it. If it's a recruiting tool, then let's maximize the efficiency of it. The other aspect is we need money. We were told as the Culture Affairs and Arts Committee that if you want to do a reception for the artists, which we did, you need to go out and get your own sponsorship, which we did. Several of you were there. But your committees need your support, not only lip service, but we need other resources. We need assistance from the Community Enrichment Department in marketing and promoting our activities and our endeavors. I think the best problem we can have is an overflow of people that come to our committee meetings that want to hear what we're doing on their behalf that we then report to you, and then you take appropriate action on it. There's a lot of things that I'm encouraged by tonight. There's some things that I still find very frustrating. I hope you will continue this dialogue, but I'm going to suggest another thing. Every committee meeting is responsible within 3 business days to report our actions to our, right now it's our staff liaison, and then that goes and gets published on the city website. I suggest that we send you those action items as well. If you can't be at that meeting, at least you'll get an idea of what is being accomplished at these committee meetings. The other thing, and this was something I advocated for very strongly, we need to train them every year on open meeting law, on procedures, on budget, on how things work. If we're going to be an extension of you guys, and we're going to talk to the constituents and answer some of the tough questions, we need to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we understand how this process works. The city clerk started a very, very robust training program once a year that was mandatory for committee members to attend. Then it got morphed a little bit, and she actually just came to a committee meeting and did the same thing. That information is invaluable. If somebody especially new to the Arizona, new to open meeting law. They don't understand how that works. That is vital information for them to have. And it's a good refresher for the rest of us to hear. Okay? The other thing is we need to collaborate in the truest sense of the word. So people all the time ask me, well, how does council arrive at this decision, or why did council do that? There is absolutely nothing that precludes any one of us from emailing anyone or all of you. I think those lines of communication, which has always been a challenge here, is important. That takes me to my next point. We need the council and the staff to maybe relax these policies a little bit about who gets promoted on city websites and how. There's a lot of good information out there, but as you know, if you get 10 people in a room, they'll get their information 20 different ways, and it's not always accurate. So let's use the resources that we have and put the burden on the committees. We've asked a number of times, if we give you this, will you put it in the city newsletter? If we have room, if we have time, if we don't have to retweak it and rewrite it. Are we getting in the way of ourselves sometimes with this? If we've got good information, we understand the policies from the get-go, and we've got a staff liaison and a council liaison there, this should be a no-brainer. Okay? I will leave you with 2 words that started the 2024 Futures Planning Session. I'm going to hold myself and all of you to it. Expect more. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I would like to add on to that, maybe a little bit of a different perspective, because we are here today because all of council saw an opportunity for a lot of change. We're here today to talk about partnerships because we saw the need. We're here today because we're talking about a framework of understanding how private organizations can carry a load where they're experts. We're here today because we saw issues with committees. So I'm willing to earn the trust because I'm part of this council that actually made this day happen, that made the communication with our staff, who I think have done a wonderful job tonight in terms of communicating what our vision has been and bringing it to fruition with these changes in our policy or our framework. I am very proud of them, and that came about because of the fact that council saw a need for change, and we communicated the change, and staff reacted wonderfully. You have some great suggestions, and it's videotaped, so we can go look at some of those suggestions. I think it's great, but I do not want to leave this room without an understanding of how we saw the need for change about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And we all worked hard to work with our staff, with our new city manager, with everyone to ensure that the vision needed to be corrected. So I appreciate your comments, but I wanted to add that because we're here tonight because of the need for change. Would anyone else like to speak? Perfect. Yes, Priscilla.
Sorry, there was a
she's
cute
gonna
dress
dance
on my shopping site. No, I'm just kidding. Good evening, council and mayor. I did have a suggestion. I like that you guys are focusing on teens, but I would highly suggest that you say youth, because tweens always get left out. And if you don't make those relationships with those tweens, you're going to be that much harder to get the teens. And, you know, youth of all ages and all developmental stages are important. So I would say youth. All right. That
Excellent.
was my suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good point. Anybody else? Quinn, do you have closing comments?
I hope that in the totality of what was presented tonight, it becomes a little bit more clear that idea of, again, expansion and enrichment. Some of those big pieces off the beginning are certainly going to require a lot of thoughtful consideration and conversation. And I love what Councilmember Gettle said, baby steps. We don't want to be here again in a couple of years saying, wow, we've really overextended. So we want to take those steps, report back to you of this is the success we're having, these are the adjustments we're making. And that's why we've called it a framework. It's something to guide us.
Very good. City Manager, any closing comments?
Quinn, do you want just to advance the slide to the end there and discuss that?
Yes. So another piece of the puzzle of making sure things are allocated appropriately, fairly, taking into consideration that the offerings of one might not be the same as other, what they bring to the table. In a future work session that we'll be doing, we'll be looking to talk about our facility rental fees, exploring that, giving some feedback and data, where we compare to other cities, and as well as that field allocation that we discussed with Councilmember Noor. How do we create something as opposed to having to create individual agreements with every single group, which is always still an option, but say how can we create a framework that is easily applied to those who fit into certain tiers are things that we're excited to present in the future and excited to invite the public to come and hear and participate in.
So I have one additional comment that I was just glancing at my notes as Ms. Chapados was talking regarding budget. I know that you were at futures planning, but I think you had to leave. Part of my proposal on committees was that they needed to have a budget for things like art receptions. Currently, the Senior Advisory Committee doesn't specifically have a budget for things they need for the Senior Info Expo, but there is a budget, and it might be created because there are sponsorships. So, but anyway, the concept of budgets and the need for various things, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we talked about the fact that we would talk about that during the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. So I agree wholeheartedly. All right. Anything else?
Madam Mayor, if I may, just real
Yes.
quickly, I think that, you know, this is a process, as you and some of the public have mentioned, has been a couple years in the making. I think that this is kind of challenging the status quo. I don't know that there's another community that has a policy like this anywhere, or a framework like this anywhere that kind of says, hey, you know what, we're going to be committed to effective use of taxpayer dollars, and we're going to do that in these set ways. And is it perfect? No, it won't be. And tomorrow it'll change, and the next day we'll need to make adjustments to that. But I think that as we look at these strategies and talk about framework, talk about partnerships, collaborations, and working with our committees, it is the goal of our organization to commit to constantly reassessing and constantly improving the offerings that we provide. It's not looking backwards and taking steps backwards, it's looking forwards and taking steps forward. And I think ultimately that's the goal of the three discussions we had tonight and the many more that we'll have in the future. It's how do we get better and how do we improve and provide better services to our community.
It's important. Appreciate it. All right. At that point, that concludes our meeting tonight. Thank you all for attending.